How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. Mike here. Today we're going to talk about timing and how important it is to anything that you're doing, but more particularly with your business. As an entrepreneur myself, timing has always come in play with just about every venture that I've tried to get on, or that I'm currently involved in, or that I've been involved in the past. Actually, this video was prompted by a book that I picked up recently called The Exit Strategy Playbook. So I guess we'll touch on a few points here, not just timing, but still focus on timing. The Exit Strategy Playbook by Adam Coffey. This is a book that basically helps you out if you're looking to exit your company or your business one day. And this is one of the things that I guess, I don't want to say all entrepreneurs, but many entrepreneurs like myself, we don't generally go into something by then thinking, okay, how do I get out of it? At least when I think of bachelor, single Mike Ojo. First started my entrepreneurship journey, it was just about being passionate about building something. This stage in my life, I typically would not go into a new venture without knowing how to get out of it. This is honestly what I encourage to everyone. If you're starting a business, or if you're already operating a business, always have in the back of your mind how you're going to exit this thing. Just having a plan doesn't necessarily mean that you do sell or you exit. It just means that you have that option open to you. Now, going back to this book, The Exit Strategy Playbook, in the early chapters, it focused mainly on timing and how important timing is and how it can make or break a deal. And like I always do on this channel, I like to tell personal stories to prove a point. So when it comes to timing, I've been a victim of this where my timing was completely off and I missed out on a great opportunity. So if you have been following my story, you know that early on in my career, I was a webmaster and I used to run a network of gaming websites. Well, one thing I left out in those videos is that I had an opportunity to exit out of my business then. I was between 19 or 20, maybe 21 at the time. I was running a successful digital gaming platform basically. And at this very point, the business was making between $60,000 and $70,000 a year. I jumped into this just, I guess, randomly, or because I was passionate about games. I never once thought, oh, one day I may need to sell this business that I'm building, or I may need to take on an investor at some point. I never thought about that. Well, one day I got a random inquiry from an investor who says, hey, I'd like to buy your network of gaming websites. I had heard of people selling their websites before that, but I always thought that only websites or platforms that were in the $1 million range would get, some attraction from investors. I never thought, okay, a smaller guy like myself could also have that. Long story short, I responded, and honestly, my first response to that inquiry or to the investor was, no, I'm not interested, or basically my response was, I'm not interested at this point, because I'd never even thought about the idea of selling my business. But emails then turned to phone calls, and then phone call turned to actually meeting this investor in person. And it turns out that it wasn't just an investor, this was like a private equity or private fund business, and what they do is buy businesses like mine. I eventually got into talking numbers, and at the time they offered to pay me $160,000 for that business. Depending on what industry your business is in, you would get a multiplier for your business based on your revenue, either that be gross revenue or the net. I believe at the time for mine, it was 2 times or 2.5 times the gross revenue. Anyway, so we move forward. One of the first challenges that I had was, okay, $160,000 is a lot of money, even for me back then. But I thought to myself, well, if I sold now, what would I do? I'm gonna have 160 grand. What would I do? What would I use the money for? So I start to talk to other people around me that I knew were entrepreneurs as well. And when I finally decided to say yes to this investor, I had already come up with a plan to use the money for this and that. And one of the things I wanted to do back then was to buy a Subway franchise. At the time, I remember reaching out to them, getting all the information, and it was gonna cost me about $75,000. And the rest of the money, I was gonna use it for, you guessed it, real estate. For those of you who follow me now, you know that I'm very passionate about real estate, but the truth of the matter is I'm very green in real estate. I've only really started investing 4 to 5 years. Now I'm talking about over a decade ago, and sometimes I still pinch myself knowing that I lost this opportunity, because I feel like if I had gotten started a decade early in investing in real estate, I would be so much more further in what I'm trying to build. But I made plans on how to use this money, and we move forward with the sale. Generally, when you're selling your business, the process is also similar to if you are buying or selling real estate. There's a part of the process called the due diligence. Basically, this is where the buyer is looking at your financials. They're looking at all of the assets that you own and also asking you a bunch of questions, basically reviewing what they're purchasing. And if at the end they see that everything is good, you get a check, or you get some, your money in the bank, and everybody walks away happy. Also, part of the process of selling a business is you have to sign, well, this is not always the case, but in my case, I had to sign what's called a non-compete clause. This basically means that once I sell the business to this buyer, then I'm not allowed for a certain period of time to go and start another competing business to compete against the business that I just sold. So we signed all of this stuff and we wrapped it around due diligence. And my due diligence was actually set to about 60 days. Now, you don't need 60 days to sell your business, and this is where timing comes in. One of the reasons why my due diligence took up to 60 days was, one, I was not prepared. Again, I never planned for one day selling this business, so my books were basically handwritten. And I remember clear as day how I used to note down all of my income and expenses. I would just write it down. Now, normally the way you keep your books is to do proper bookkeeping, have an accountant. And for me, again, once I have my little notes at the end of the year, I give that to an accountant. They help me file for taxes. And that's how the story goes. But in the process of selling your business, having proper books can make or break a deal. In my case, I basically extended my due diligence process because I needed to get my books in order. I needed to get this asset and this asset and this website, all of these things I needed to get in order to help with the sale transaction. Now, 2 weeks before the closing date, something devastating happened. It's called Google Panda. For those of you who are well versed in search engine optimization, you know that Google, who is the king of search, they have these updates on their search algorithm almost every year or ever so often. And this year was Panda. The update was named Panda. It affected me in a very bad way. So basically, after this update, a lot of my websites that were ranking top 3 now were on page 5 or page 6 for the same keywords. 2 things happened here. One, my pages got deranked, which also means the value of my business was now off by a significant amount, because the investor who was buying my business actually put a lot of value on those rankings. When I noticed this started to happen, I remember reaching out and we had a conversation, and I thought, okay, perhaps they're just gonna come back with a different amount, maybe just a tidbit smaller amount. No, that didn't happen. They basically came back and told me, well, because of this, which we put a lot of value in, this is one of the reasons why we approached you in the first place. And now that you don't have this thing anymore, we're no longer interested. So a deal that we had been working on for about 2 months prior just completely fell apart. All of the goals and things that I had planned for to use my newly acquired wealth to get to didn't happen. If this deal closed, say 2 weeks before or a couple of days before, we would not have this conversation. And so when I was reading this book, The Exit Strategy, and it was talking about timing when it comes to selling your business, it really took me back. And that's why I was prompted to make this video, just to stress the importance of timing. Whatever it is that you're doing, and this can be applied to just about anything, but more specifically business. And for those of you who are, creating and building things here and there like I am, I want you to start having a plan to exit. Every time you get into something, you want to have a plan to get out of it. For right now, as a matter of fact, as I'm making this video, some of you may already know, I'm getting started on a new venture. And as I'm building this company, I'm also building my exit strategy. So much so that if 2 years or 5 years in, someone approaches me about, hey, we'd like to buy your business, I would already have everything situated to make that transaction easy peasy. Generally, a business sale can take anywhere from 30 days or less to over a year. Again, it all depends on how well you're prepared and how well you plan for your exit. But that's my spiel today. I hope you learned something from it, and I hope for me that I never repeat the same mistake. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if this is your first time, make sure you subscribe. Again, my name is Mike, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Peace.